Champions. Welcome home to a space that remembers what you've survived and expects more from who you're becoming. Because being the agreeable hero almost cost a life that mattered, yours. And watching a friend burn himself out to brightness taught a brutal lesson. People rarely treasure what costs them nothing. And the day he stopped shattering on impact was the day his world stopped dictating his shape, not because reality softened, but because his spine hardened and his boundaries became steel. And that revelation echoes not just in his story, but in every heartbeat that is tired of making soft landings for other people's carelessness, while quietly hoping generosity will someday be seen for the wealth it is. And the truth is simple and sharp. There are two selves you carry. The one that explains and apologizes and keeps auditioning for rooms that never intended to honor you, and the one that moves in quiet certainties, speaks with decisions rather than sentences, and leaves without fanfare when respect goes missing. And the longer you inhabit the first, the more your edges dull where precision is required, the more you trade strategy for softness, until you confuse goodness with surrender. When in reality, the path forward is not cruelty, but calibration, recognizing that care without criteria is an invitation to be drained. And that evolution begins when you refuse to be a steady source of comfort to those who are comfortable watching you sink. Because power blooms the moment you stop letting guilt pilot your choices and start treating your attention like a scarce resource rather than a public fountain. And in learning this, you also learn to subscribe to Dark Psychology Decoded to keep understanding the unseen rules of control, resilience, and emotional intelligence that protect your peace. Start with the hardest pivot. Stop handing your heart to those who treat it like pocket change. Because your weakness was never tenderness, it was placement. And every hour poured into a bottomless cup teaches the cup to leak faster, while those who feast on your brightness learn to interpret your giving as needing them to stay. And the instant your need is visible, your movements become easy to script by people who trade in control, which is how a quiet dependency masquerades as kindness and leaves you wondering why mercy makes you invisible, why explanations never raise your price, and why predictability is the enemy of respect. Because memory protects pain before it honors kindness, and human instincts honor consequence before they care for context, meaning the more certain you are to forgive, the less pressure there is to grow, and every time you tolerated a slight, you rehearsed your disposability for them, and each attempt to prove your worth underlined the belief that it was still a question. So step back with clarity. Your care is a premium, not a handout, and access should track consistency, not nostalgia. And when people reveal that they feel entitled to your presence no matter their pattern, that is your map to step away without speeches, because detachment protects peace while indifference closes the account that once paid out to everyone. And if some call that cold, remember that warmth without boundaries burns the giver first. And ruthlessness here is simply the refusal to reward disloyalty with proximity, the refusal to keep answering every ping, to excuse every lie, to translate your silence for those who lost the right to hear your voice. Because when you stop delivering reactions, scavengers starve. And the balance of power returns to the one who decides who gets a response and who becomes a lesson in what happens when a generous soul goes gated. And yes, those who wasted your energy will wonder where your sunlight went. And the truth is, it turned to ice the day you believed yourself enough to stop melting for those who only needed warmth on demand. Next, convert injury into advantage because pain is the teacher that doesn't flatter, the curriculum that sears out what's flimsy. And the difference between the broken and the built isn't the pain they carry, it's the conversion they choose, since complaining spends agony like loose change, while reflection invests it like seed, and those who rise from wreckage are not blessed by fortune so much as guided by discipline. Betrayals become data, heartbreak becomes feedback, failure becomes a lab where ego gets rinsed off the truth, and the question changes from why me to what leverage lives here. Understanding that hurt is not punishment but information, a blinking arrow pointing at the gap in fortitude or pattern of trust that left the door open. Because each rejection is a mirror showing where you outsourced your value. Each loss dissolves the lie that anything is permanent, and the moment you see pain as raw material, it stops being a wound and starts being a forge, tempering your thinking, sharpening your focus, and training you to craft response instead of broadcasting reaction. Since most cry to feel better, but the strong study to get better, cataloging the behaviors of adversaries without letting bitterness write the script, dissecting their own missteps without ritual humiliation, turning attachment into discipline and disappointment into concentration, until resilience is no longer a buzzword, but a posture that unsettles rooms, because it carries the stillness of someone who survived their own private winter and learned to kindle from within. And once fear loses the ability to bargain with you through the memory of your last collapse, manipulation fails because a person who has sat in the fire doesn't jump at sparks. And when comfort stops being your god, clarity becomes your guide. Release the hunger to be correctly seen, because the craving to be understood twines around your throat like velvet rope. You call it connection. It calls itself control. And every extra word you spend defending intention simply hands your blueprint to anyone who profits from predicting you. Since in the darker math of influence, the one who knows your motive holds your rudder, which is why the most composed people let others guess, let projections miss the mark, and gain an edge precisely because ambiguity forces caution, while justification confesses the need for permission, and nothing weakens presence like the undertone of "please believe me," because real power does not narrate itself. It acts, and the quiet figure who does not explain absences, who does not annotate standards, who does not argue their pivot, pulls gravity the way a storm gathers air. The silence is pressure. The undecoded motive is weight, and the loudest authority often lives in what is not said. So keep your interior architecture yours. The more transparent you become, the easier it is to dismantle you, not because openness is bad, but because intimacy belongs to the trusted, not the curious. And there is a sweetness in being misread by those who seek leverage, because their guesswork becomes your shield, and their labels becomes layers you never needed to peel off. And when you finally stop editing yourself for audiences that were never buying, you become unreadable to manipulators and magnetic to the few who recognize self-respect when they feel it in the room. Detach, don't chase, because pleading for attention, for answers, for love, empties the reservoir where your self-respect should live. And every step you take after someone who is already walking away shrinks you to fit their lack. So replace pursuit with principle, recognizing that leaving is not coldness but command, the sacred ability to walk whenever worth is threatened, no matter how much your longing argues for one more chance. Because the culture taught you to mistake attachment for loyalty when attachment is dependence that fears emptiness, while loyalty is strength that chooses presence freely, and in the tilted game of emotional commerce. The one who chases almost always forfeits leverage, since the act of begging announces you'll accept the terms as given, and predators in polite clothing are listening for that note, ready to tune you like an instrument. Which is why the strong become skilled at silence. They don't fight for what disrespects them. They disappear from it. They don't furnish essays about why their distance is deserved. They leave and let the vacancy do the speaking. Because in spaces engineered to feed on your reactions, indifference is a shutdown sequence that terrifies manipulators. Not rage. Rage is readable, while indifference is weather they can't predict. And when your signals become difficult to script, minds that relied on your predictability tread carefully or drift away, and either outcome is a win, because your energy no longer hemorrhages into proving what should have been obvious to anyone qualified to keep a seat in your life. Now let's amplify the pivot that separates your versions. The first self shakes hands with everyone at the cost of shaking inside, rewrites itself to keep peace and calls exhaustion compassion, but that script costs too much and pays out in crumbs, while the second self favors small circles, crisp standards, and quiet exits, realizing that kindness without criteria is just unpaid labor dressed as virtue. So choose your company like you are curating oxygen, because you are. And remember that a generous soul is not a public utility, that sacrifice is noble when it serves a vision, but foolish when it feeds a void that only grows, and that the people worth keeping listen at your boundaries without blaming you for having them, show their care without invoices, and honor your silence without suspicion. And if that sounds rare, it is, which is why you conserve. Because rare things are guarded, not parceled out to anyone who asks sweetly. And this too is part of becoming unbreakable. Reshaping your habits around what protects your center, even when your old self twitches toward explanation or habitually reaches for one last try, and training your nervous system to feel normal in the presence of your own standards, so you no longer confuse discomfort with danger, when your new posture refuses familiar roads to familiar pain. Notice how your life changes when you ritualize withdrawal from the wrong places. Mornings reclaim depth because you are not rehearsing old arguments in your head. Afternoons stretch wider because your calendar is no longer stuffed with obligations to people who do not reciprocate. And nights grow quieter because you are not convincing yourself that a delayed apology counts as growth. Your patients stop subsidizing their inertia, and your distance stops bleeding into guilt. And in that regained space, attention returns to the only source that reliably produces peace, the one inside you, the generator that hums when you set aligned goals, keep promises to yourself. Practice the tiny disciplines that look trivial from the outside, but build a spine you can lean on when storms sip the light from your horizon. And the compound effect of these choices is tangible. Your voice steadies, your thresholds raise, your focus warms to the work that actually builds your future. And people who once read you like a predictable script start mispronouncing your name because they no longer hold a dictionary to your decisions. There will be a test. Old ghosts will knock with new masks, offering kinder language and the same terms, and your body will want to believe, because familiarity has a flavor that mimics safety. But if you keep your ledger honest, you'll remember how little interest was paid on those debts, how often the bill arrived in disrespect, and then you'll do what the unbreakable do, choose distance without fanfare, and let outcomes teach the lessons you stopped delivering at your expense. Because in this life, repetition is curriculum for those who refuse to learn by signal, and you have moved into a season that speaks in outcomes, not warnings. A season where the gentlest thing you can do for yourself is refuse what cost too much last time. For those wondering whether fierceness cancels warmth, hear this. Ruthlessness, properly understood, is mercy applied to the right person first. You, the correction of a system that rewarded betrayal with backdoor access to your peace. And when you stop handing your softness to those unqualified to hold it, your kindness grows richer for those who have earned it, not thinner. You become easier to trust because you are harder to sway, and your love becomes safer because it lives beside standards, not on top of apologies. And those who confuse boundaries for coldness will drift toward rooms where chaos feels like home, while those who have done their own work will meet you at your level, relieved to be seen by someone who no longer confuses pleasing with loving. Keep building the second self with concrete steps. Audit your circle and rank it by reciprocity, then adjust access accordingly. Practice saying no without thesis statements. Replace public processing with private reflection. Ritualize movement, water, sleep, and learning, so your chemistry supports your clarity. Chronicle your wins to remind your mind it delivers. Write down what you will no longer tolerate and keep it where you can see it on the days your old self tries to reopen negotiations. Respond, don't react, and where response is impossible without cost, choose silence and let time cash the check. Measure relationships by how you feel after, not by the intensity of the moment. And when a door slams, thank your past self for having the courage to install hinges that work. If panic whispers that all this will make you lonely, listen carefully. Standards reduce noise so connection can deepen, and solitude is not a verdict. It is a training ground where you learn your own weather, where you become fluent in your cycles, and where you strengthen the pillars that keep you upright. When a storm sells you the fantasy that company is always better than quiet, it isn't. Not when the price is self-betrayal. And the loneliest place in the world is a crowded room where your mouth says yes while your gut says run. So choose the room where your gut can sit without clenching, even if for a while. That room is your own. There will be days where the old script tries to boot. You will want to explain your distance to someone who did not earn an audience. You will want to overforgive because you're tired of holding the line, and you will feel a tug to chase closure, even though you know closure is just a prettier word for control. But this is when you practice the discipline that turns a posture into a personality. Breathe. Walk, lift, write, work, pray, plan, and let the wave pass without grabbing your phone or your pride. Because every time you outweigh an impulse, you reclaim a little more sovereignty from the parts of you that used to negotiate your standards away in exchange for a moment's relief. And if a voice wonders whether all this makes you feared more than loved, accept a paradox older than empires. Love that respects you lasts longer than love that consumes you. And being a person whose word is iron and whose boundaries are real will earn a quieter, steadier kind of affection. The kind that does not beg you to shrink for access or punish you for being clear. The kind that prefers the stability of your spine to the softness of your surrender. And the kind that does not mistake your silence for emptiness, but recognizes it as a full room where you store your discernment, your commitments, your future. So make the declaration in your own language and let the echo settle into your bones. The era of breaking for people ends here. The era of trading pain for power begins here. The craving to be decoded is retired. The chase is over. Self-respect is executive authority. Your warmth earns its keep. Your absence answers what your words used to explain, and from this point forward, you will live as the version that moves like weather, calm until a boundary is crossed, clear in expectation, quiet in decision, and steady enough to be called ruthless by those who never learned that compassion grows best beside offense. And if you need a line to anchor this turn, say it out loud until your nervous system believes you. You are no longer easy to break. Your kindness has a spine, your pain is a blacksmith, your silence is a language, and your feet remember how to walk away. When people who once fed on your reactivity meet your quiet, they start hearing thunder in the calm, because a mouth that used to rush to defend now chooses stillness, and stillness unsettles those who relied on your noise. Stepping back without spectacle gives you a rare kind of command, the right to leave turmoil behind while carrying your center intact, and the old Florentine strategist would insist that the spine of lasting rule is inner regulation, since anyone unable to loosen their grip on outcomes will always be steered by those who can let go. And because most lives are pulled by two cords, attachment and apprehension, the person who disciplines attachment can guide both love and fear without announcing it. The unsentimental understand that not everyone merits access, not every feeling earns a microphone, and not every bond deserves resurrection. So you practice reclaiming your fuel without a press release, shutting doors softly and letting your distance carry weight like consequence, which is the cleanest form of psychological strategy. No tantrums, no threats, only absence that teaches. The further you detach from drama, the more authority gathers in your hands, and you discover that calm is not hiding in connection, but in control of self. The truest strength is being able to cherish deeply, yet leave instantly the second your dignity is at risk. Detachment is not apathy, it is correct care, placing your well-being first so love can remain honest. The day you stop pleading, the bleeding stops. And when there is no more blood in the water, no one can circle you for a feed. If you need a single line to ground this turn, type it somewhere you will see it daily. I choose serenity over approval, and I protect it with action. Boundaries are the quiet armor that keeps your life from becoming a public park where anyone can wander in, take a piece of you, and vanish without cleaning up the mess. And because so many were trained to think that saying no is selfish, the absence of limits often masquerades as kindness while quietly eroding self-respect. Every indulgence of a slight chips away at your outline. Every forgiveness without consequence dissolves your edges. Every time you let someone stretch the line for peace, the bill arrives in resentment later. And only the naive confuse endless tolerance with strength, while the seasoned know a heart unguarded is a bright target. As the Florentine warned, in other words, a leader who cannot govern himself cannot benefit from wise counsel, because if you won't guard your space, no ally can do it for you. The world does not automatically honor openness. It studies it for leverage, and yes, the same smile that enjoys your generosity today may look for loopholes in your patience tomorrow, because unchecked appetite always tests the fence that isn't there. Proper boundaries are not brick walls built to isolate. They are gates that protect what is sacred inside you. And nothing terrifies manipulators like clarity, because clarity removes their favorite fog. In the shadows of influence, boundaries are instruments of direction. When you deliver a clean no without apology, you broadcast competence. When betrayal loses access, you establish that your value cannot be negotiated under pressure. The powerful don't debate respect. They model it by proximity and distance. Leniency without structure fertilizes chaos, and pardon without consequence invites a repeat performance. The moment you stop rewarding poor behavior with presence, the chorus of excuses goes quiet, and the room recalibrates. Some will label your standards arrogance. Others will mutter about ego. But anyone with wisdom will recognize self-command. People learn how to handle you from what you permit. So build your perimeter like a fortress of priorities. Parasites peel off, noise dies down, and tranquility returns, revealing who actually values you. Those who honor your rules rather than resent them. Limits attract the committed and repel the opportunist, separating genuine from calculating and making your company feel earned, not default. Life without boundaries drains dignity, but life with them gives you the helm. Remember this vow and repeat it when needed. My limits shield my peace, and those who truly care will never ask me to lower my armor. Silence is the refined tool of people who carry real weight, especially when language has been discounted by overuse. Most fill the air to manage their nerves, to look sure, to be validated by volume. But every extra syllable can turn into ammunition in the hands of someone who harvests information for control. In a culture hooked on commentary, quiet is status, and sages across centuries advised never to disclose your entire mind because transparency without discernment makes you predictable, and predictable minds are easy to puppeteer. When you embrace pause, you become hard to read, and mystery makes even confident people second-guess themselves. Strategic quiet is not a void. It is a position on the board that shifts the game without a swing. Because the less you speak, the more others reveal their motives to fill the space. Confessing anxieties, loyalties, and angles while trying to decode you. Those who refuse to be baited listen longer than they explain, watch longer than they promise, and prefer measured action to loud ambition. Every well-placed pause raises your gravity, and every silence you hold invites the room to lean toward you, surrendering details you would have never obtained by force. Perception rules human behavior, and the less people can pin down your intentions, the more carefully they behave, because uncertainty is a leash on impulsive overreach. Quiet is not absence, but presence multiplied, so stop trying to win with volume. The loud often chase power, while the quiet already have it. The masters of history understood an old trick: disclose less, and imaginations will do your work for you, often obeying the possibility they fear. Train your poise until calm becomes its own language. When insulted, keep your words, and watch as the offender stews in their own echo. When poked, to react. Deliver no signal and let their appetite for your attention expose their desperation. Power does not audition to be understood. It allows its weight to be felt. And unpredictability born of silence matures into the kind of respect that doesn't need reminders. Practice this small drill daily. Delay your first reply. Breathe. Remove the biography from your answers, and let spaces stand. When you withhold compulsive explanation, you stop playing defense and start authoring the script. If a line helps lock it in, keep this one near. My quiet steadies the storm, and my restraint directs the room. Total loyalty, given without criteria, is a gilded cage that looks like virtue until it tightens, because devotion that never pauses to reassess becomes a lever others can pull without cost. Human beings are inconsistent, self-interested, and often loyal to their next advantage. So expecting immaculate fidelity is an invitation to heartbreak. The world does not revolve around niceness. It responds to strategy, and when your allegiance is absolute to a person rather than to purpose, you forfeit independence and invite quiet contempt, because behavior that is guaranteed is easier to exploit. Predictable allies are the first to be cornered in the chess game of influence. The disciplined treat loyalty as a considered commitment, not a mood. They make it conditional on growth, protection, and mutual elevation. And when a bond no longer serves those pillars, they renegotiate or withdraw rather than romanticize suffering. Most cling out of fear. Fear of isolation, fear of being misunderstood, fear of losing group safety. And yet those are often the stories that end in disposal once usefulness fades. The shrewd ally with the opportunity, not the idol, because tides move and smart people ride rather than standing still demanding permanence from a changing sea. Wear loyalty like a mask you choose, not a tattoo you cannot remove. That is not cruelty. It is realism about incentives. Never concentrate all dependence on one pillar or one person. Reliance kills autonomy, and autonomy is dominance's root system. Conceal where your true commitments live and let people assume you are on their side while you remain free inside. The appearance of allegiance is often more powerful than allegiance itself, because it soothes others while preserving your options. Count the lessons of courts and companies. Rulers have fallen by trusting too much, lieutenants eliminated by serving too faithfully, and old friends turned rivals by demanding sameness where hierarchy actually governs decisions. When your loyalty is boundless, people stop fearing your exit, and without that possibility, they test your limits, exploit your devotion, and assume you will stay regardless. Order is maintained by the credible threat of distance. Treat your loyalty like a blade, precise, deliberate, brought out when it advances your mission, and never like a free gift, because presents are forgotten but sharp tools are remembered. This posture makes you hard to trap and therefore hard to control, which is the center of cunning power. Be legible enough to cooperate and opaque enough to remain sovereign. Critics will call it heartless, but those are often the voices of people who feel safest when others are easy to use. Remember the clean law. Loyalty minus strategy equals self-betrayal, and allegiance belongs first to your purpose, never to passers-by on your path. Becoming beyond reach is the final shape of strength, a state where insults slide off, betrayals fail to puncture, and manipulation can't find an opening. Not because you stopped feeling, but because you became fully governed from within. Disorder will not stop arriving. People will not stop probing, and circumstances owe you nothing. But while the fragile break and the frightened flail, the untouchable moves through chaos like a shadow that cannot be caught. Inner mastery is freedom. Whoever controls you emotionally owns your day, and whoever anchors inside the self becomes unseizable. Abandon the chase for applause, permission, and constant reassurance, because those are cleverly wrapped traps that keep you tethered to random whims. The world prizes presence, poise, and crystal clarity far more than it rewards purity for its own sake. The moment you stop outsourcing esteem, you begin gathering power that is not up for auction. Invest in skills that compound, in routines that sharpen, and in strategies that remove luck from the equation. Cultivate patience that stretches, attention that doesn't wobble, and the quiet confidence that grows from doing hard things consistently. Let your reputation be minted by reliability, not broadcast by hype. Most people fear what they cannot forecast, and once you detach from expectation, from instant reaction, and from the craving to be decoded, you become a puzzle with no obvious levers. Choose strategy over spike, measurement over tantrum, discipline over appetite. Every response becomes deliberate, and every silence loaded with meaning. Imagine yourself the still axis around which a storm spins, and train until your calm is the heaviest object in the room. If you cannot be both adored and respected, tilt toward the energy that makes overreach costly. This is not about alarming others, but about making it clear that crossing your line will be felt. Send the unspoken message that you will not be easy prey for anyone's convenience. You are no longer a mirror reflecting opinions. You are a sum of convictions and practices that do not wobble when stared at. To reach this tier, release the last remnants of dependence, the need to justify every move, to extend forgiveness without wisdom, to be noticed and named, grow past grasping and grudge alike, anchor to yourself and refuse uprooting by weather. From here, authority begins to feel effortless. Rooms adjust to your signal, some with admiration, others with caution, but none with indifference. You will stop playing someone else's game and start being the measure, and a single sentence can seal it. Nothing outside me can break me. Because I no longer hand it the handle, life will keep pressing on your patience, will betray your trusts, and will sometimes penalize your kindness, proving again that fairness is a myth used to soothe children, and that people are gloriously unpredictable. The only instrument you can truly depend on is your own mind and the habits that strengthen it. For a long time, you may have let others program your calm, spent hard-earned energy on the undeserving, begged to be properly understood, and clung to attachments that returned mostly disappointment. But that chapter can close without ceremony. You now hold a working model for becoming a person who is hard to steer. Stop pouring into thankless mouths. Refine agony into leverage. Retire the appetite to be decoded. Walk away from what drains. Erect boundaries that actually hold. Practice stillness until it has a voice. Treat loyalty like a tool and not a destiny. And shape yourself into someone designed to be respected, not handled. None of this comes by luck. None of this is simple. And every move requires repetition until the new posture is your baseline. But each step removes a lever someone used to pull. A wise teacher once suggested that the prudent do quickly what the slow learn too late. And today you can select the quicker path. Choose discipline over drift. Choose command over pleading, and adopt a polished, silent ruthlessness that refuses to harm but never allows harm to linger. Ahead, the road will still pitch and bend, but from now on each trial can become a tool, each betrayal a tutorial, each delay an arena for steadiness. People forged in flame come out tempered, sharpened by design, and guarded by self-mastery. Walk forward with uncluttered intent. Act without announcement. Rise without permission. Slips, and let results arrive while you remain busy building. The world will notice the shift eventually, but by the time they do, you will already be past the point of being easy to touch. If you need to capture your commitment in a simple ritual, whisper a different promise into each morning. I will be the kind of person whose silence directs the day, whose limits are real, whose loyalty is earned, and whose peace is not for sale. To make this practical and keep your momentum honest, build a weekly cadence that protects the person you are becoming. Run a 10-minute audit of your calendar and cut one commitment that brings dread without growth. Practice a 24-hour rule before responding to provocative messages. Write 3 boundary sentences you can deploy without essays. That doesn't work for me. I'm not available for that. If this continues, I'll step back and rehearse them until your voice stays steady. Replace public venting with private notes you never send, then harvest one insight about your patterns. Draft a loyalty ledger with 2 columns, mutual investment and one-way effort, and adjust access based on evidence, not memories. Schedule silence the way you schedule meetings and treat it as training, not a luxury. Set 2 growth targets measured by behaviors you control, not outcomes you can't, and track them for 30 days. Stop defending your worth to people who love moving goalposts, reduce contact or shift topics without guilt. Store a 1-line compass in your phone and on your desk. Protect the center, and the rest will arrange itself. Small moves repeated beat dramatic vows forgotten, and every hour you spend honoring these moves teaches your nervous system that the new settings are safe. The aim is not to become unfeeling, but to become unsteerable by anyone's fleeting mood. You will still be generous, but not to those who punish generosity. You will still forgive, but without unlocking the same door. You will still love, but with a spine. And on the rare days when the old scripts beg to run, when you itch to explain, to overgive, to chase closure, let time pass without feeding the urge, then mark the win. That is how sovereignty hardens, one resisted impulse at a time. If the voice in your head warns that standards build distance, remind it that distance from the wrong crowd creates space for the right connections to breathe. Solitude will visit more often as you raise your bar. But solitude is not a sentence. It is a gym where focus adds muscle and where you learn your weather. So other people's storms stop deciding your forecast. The loneliest feeling is not being alone. It is standing in a crowd that mistakes your silence for weakness and demands performance for access. Refuse the stage. Choose the room where being yourself does not require a discount, even if it is just your living room for a while. The people meant for your next chapter will not need to be bribed with self-betrayal. They will recognize your steadiness, appreciate your clarity, and find relief in your lack of chaos. Meanwhile, let life do its sorting work as you keep doing yours. The day you finally see that not everything deserves rescue will be the day you stop drowning in other people's oceans. Build your raft out of boundaries, tie it with routines, and let the tide carry away what refuses to hold its own weight. And when doubt flickers, come back to the handful of sentences that hold the whole architecture together. You are done being easy to break. Your kindness wears armor. Your hurt became a forge. Your quiet carries voltage, and your feet remember how to leave when respect leaves first. Write them, say them, live them, and let the rest adjust or exit. Close with a personal seal that matches your voice and print it somewhere visible. I elevate calm over chaos. I let my limits speak. I keep my counsel. I lend loyalty with judgment, and I move through the world hard to corner and easy to respect. If you share this energy with someone who needs it, you will find the work deepens for you too, because teaching anchors practice. You are no longer the version that bends for crumbs. You are the version that sets the table, chooses who eats, and ends the meal on time. Step into your day with that quiet certainty, and watch how quickly the unnecessary learns to starve in the presence of your standards.